All right, what up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Living the Dream podcast. On this show, we're going to talk about the boredom of focus. And so I spent this past weekend, it's September 12th, it's a Monday when I'm recording this. I spent this past weekend watching Suits with my fiance. I liked the fact that we watched Suits together, but we may have watched a bit too much. I think we started the show probably on Friday and we're already on season 2, and that's just like my self-improvement self is like, you could have been reading a book. You could have been taking action to multiply a business. You could have been doing this. You could have been doing that. You could have been doing this. You could have been doing that. But I was having a crisis of focus. And so in the last podcast, I told you about the conclusion of the crisis. But in this podcast, I want to tell you about um, kind of the thought process over the weekend. I'll rehash that because I talked about in the last podcast, but I also want to talk about the boredom of focus and how I woke up Monday morning and basically had nothing to do. So, um, yeah, I'll just go ahead and start rehashing the summary of the line of thought. I was like, Alex Hormozy told me I need to focus. He's worth $100 million. He's probably right. So I was like, I need to focus. I've also had Dylan Weir tell me I need to focus. And he's a good buddy of mine who's also in the real estate space. I've had a couple people tell me I just need to focus and hone in and just stay consistent. And that was part of the reason for this podcast. Like, I wanted to focus on something that I can be consistent with. But I've built momentum with this podcast. Cool stuff has happened with the podcast. I need to build something else that I can be consistent with, right? And it's like you just have to stack consistency basically. And so I'm consistent with this one thing. I have a system around it now. It um doesn't take thought power from me. And so what is the next stage of consistency I can build in my life? Because a lot of things are inconsistent. So if I can just make things consistent, I will start to see more results, right? And so things weren't being consistent because I wasn't focused. And I think focus is a part of clarity, which is something I wouldn't have said before. But now it's like when you're clear, I think you're focused. So um, we spent a lot of the weekend watching Suits because I was switching up what I was going to focus on and just stick with. And I'd come to the conclusion that it was going to be real estate for a variety of reasons that you can go back to the other podcasts and listen to. However, I woke up Monday morning and all the stuff that I would usually do, all the stuff I was usually thinking about, I wasn't thinking about it anymore. And I wasn't going to do it because I was focused. And this is the boredom that comes with focus. And that's where it has shown up in my life. It is Monday morning today. I'm recording a podcast, but I just had so much extra time because I was focused on one thing, and that one thing doesn't take a bunch of my time every day. So it's like, well, what am I going to do with my time? And that's a legitimate question. It's a question that I haven't answered. Like, yeah, I'm recording this podcast right now. It's Monday morning, but we went to the gym and I just had 45 minutes of free time really because it was like, all I have to do today is build a list of people that I'm going to get capital from. So it's like I could listen to a podcast, I could go to that podcast that has a list of people basically, and I have my list of people, and then I can start reaching out to them and building a relationship. But I'm not going to spam them today, so I might send out 10 messages today, where it's like basically an email and a phone call or something, a phone call or to book a meeting, or LinkedIn messages to book a meeting, whatever it may be. And so yeah, I got focused and I was like, I have one thing to do, and it's a very simple thing, and I don't have to overthink stuff. And now I have time. And I think that's the goal, right? The goal is freedom. And I think focus brings freedom, discipline brings freedom. But when you have that freedom, what are you going to do with it? I think that's a big question for a lot of us. And a lot of times, successful people do the boring things over and over and over and over for a long period of time, for an insanely long period of time. And then they become an overnight success, right? So, what is it? The boredom of focus. And it's really like when you have one thing to do, it only it clears up a lot of mind space. And so all the mind space that you usually fill your mind with to distract yourself from emotions, from feelings, from your reality, it's you have the space back. And so you have to fight through some of that stuff. You have to fight through some of that limiting beliefs. You have to think through it. You have to be with yourself. Layla Hormozy talks a lot about this. I love the Hormozys, if you haven't noticed. Layla Hormozy talks a lot about this, talks about the fact that you have to learn to be alone. And a lot of us, when we're alone, we've just filled our mind with stuff. And so we haven't learned to be alone. We haven't learned to enjoy our own company, not like our business company, but like our own. being with ourselves, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, the boredom of focus has given me space to think. And I try to fill that space with stuff like Candy Crush or chess or just YouTube or podcasts or whatever it may be. It's like, just sit there and be with yourself. That's okay. So that's what I've learned. The boredom of focus gives you freedom to think, freedom to be with yourself, and that can make a lot of us uncomfortable, including myself. But that boredom is important because that being with yourself is important, and the boredom comes with consistency, right? Like when you do the same thing over and over, you do it for 10 years, you're gonna be really good at it. You're consistent for the next 10 years, you're probably gonna be really bored 20 years in, you know? And so it's just a character trait that I'm building right now, and I think it's good to build. So that's where it has shown up in my life. Just this Monday morning, after deciding to be focused, I realized all the stuff I was filling my life with, I didn't really need anymore, which is interesting. Like you never needed them, but I wanted them in my life. And why did I want them? And it's probably that uncomfortable loneliness feeling that I have. And so where do I want it to show up in my life? I want the boredom of focus to always be there, and I want to embrace that boredom and embrace that being with myself and embrace that free time, right? Like I always think I have to be working 16 hours a day, but working can look like plenty of things. It could be like thinking about the business for 4 hours. It could be about taking action for 4 hours. It could be about networking for 4 hours. It could be whatever. And so that's where I want to show up in my life. Just have a clear focus and then be okay with the boredom of that focus, because I'm okay being alone. I'm okay being not productive, whatever that means. But I don't always have to fill my time if I'm effective. So if I can make $1 million a year in 2 hours a day, why should I work 16? Right? Some of you might be like, well, to make $8 million a year, but whatever it may be, if you can make what you need in the amount of time that is less than 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, like go do what you enjoy. And if you don't know what you enjoy, spend that time thinking about what you enjoy, because that's what life is about, right? Living a life that you enjoy, because at the end of the day, it all goes to dust anyway. So how can you apply it to your life? I would say get one goal, get focused on an action, and after that, create space in your mind by focusing on that action. So do that one action, realize that today is now a successful day because I've done that action, and then spend the excess time just thinking about um, your life and what you want for it, and just be with yourself. You know, maybe that is YouTube for you. I don't know. But yeah, just go for it. And thank you guys for listening to this episode. It's just me being a little vulnerable, me telling you about the boredom of focus. Like it really is boring. Alex Hormozzi talks about the boring work, and it's just waking up, and he writes often. I often am like, what are those top level people doing every day? And they wake up and they like review the numbers and optimize for the numbers and the processes and the systems, and that probably gets boring after a while, because like, okay, I'm probably thinking of new marketing stuff, new sales stuff, or I'm talking to this employee, having the same conversation I had with this employee, but this person needs it because they're an individual, all that good stuff. I don't really know because I'm not top level executive yet, but when I run a business, I'll let you know what um, the people who run millions and millions of dollars worth of business, I'll let you know what they're doing with their days, because I'll be there eventually. So yeah, thank you guys for listening. As we always ask, go ahead and shoot this podcast over to 1 to 3 people that you know need to hear our message. Go ahead and give us a 5-star review on iTunes if you liked the show. And on that note, focus well. We're out.